Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good afternoon. I am Said Al-Kadrawi, Special Advisor to the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, and I'll be the moderator for this session. Very welcome to the EU side event at COP26 dedicated to the Just Transition Mechanism that was set up by the EU to alleviate the social and economic impact on the hardest hit territories, such as regions dependent on coal, fossil fuels, or on carbon-intensive industries. This means that we will not be able to address all issues that are relevant in the context of a just transition, because clearly, regardless the economic structure of a region, its geographical location, policymakers and stakeholders in all regions and cities, everywhere in Europe and everywhere in the world, will have to address the many social implications that, of the economic and societal transformation that we are going through and that we have to go through. Vulnerable people everywhere are suffering first and most as a result of global warming, because they are more likely to live in areas exposed to floods, at risks of losing everything, or because they cannot afford air conditioning during extreme heat waves, or because good healthcare and healthy food could well become increasingly expensive. But on the other hand, climate action is often regressive in nature, because pricing negative externalities or phasing out unsustainable practices may disproportionately affect lower income households, while subsidies, on the other hand, to promote electric cars or solar panels are often taken up first by more wealthy people. It doesn't have to be like that, but it shows that the social dimension needs to be structurally embedded in the design of climate policy making from day one. And I am happy to just quickly mention that the Commission proposed in its Fit for 55 package the creation of a social climate fund and the obligation for member states also to develop social climate action plans. So this is to be continued. But the point we want to make today is that there is obviously also a territorial dimension to this. Some regions will clearly have many more difficulties in rebooting their economy, developing a new future-proof economic model, in moving from the old fossil fuel dependent world to the new one. And people living there in these areas are more at risks than others living elsewhere. And that is why one of the first initiatives of the European Green Deal was actually the launch early 2020 of the Just Transition Mechanism. In the meantime, this proposal has been addressed by the co-legislators, and it's being implemented in the member states. And one of the interesting elements of the mechanism is that member states are required to develop a just transition plan, assessing the transition challenges, detailing the transition processes, and the measures that are proposed to address the challenges. And I understand that these plans are being finalized, some are ready, some others are coming soon. So we'll certainly come back to the state of play. So let's now move to the discussion. But before doing so, let me invite you also as a participant to join the discussion and ask questions by using the Slido link that is visible on the Swepcard page on your screen. Very grateful if you could become active participants and ask questions, as many as you wish. So today, I think we have a nice panel with people from different parts of Europe to discuss this important issue. They have different backgrounds, they have different responsibilities. But let me first of all like to invite Miriam Boveda from the European Commission to say a bit more about some of the details of this mechanism and what it aims and how it goes. Miriam is working at DG Regio, and she holds a master's degree in European law, has more than 25 years of experience of working on cohesion policy and sustainable growth, both in the private and in the public sector, or at EU level, but also a more local level. So she's well placed to tell us more about this important topic. She's currently working very hard with other people throughout the Commission to integrate the European Green Deal objectives in the cohesion policy instruments across the EU. So Miriam, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Said, and good afternoon, everyone. On the side of the European Commission, we have the European Green Deal, which is defining the EU long-term vision to reach climate neutrality by 2050. And this is a departure point. We want to transform the Union into a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy. And in this context, the Commission has set up the Just Transition Mechanism, which is a new and unique instrument of cohesion policy to ensure that no regions are left behind in our transition to a climate-neutral Europe. The Just Transition Mechanism consists of 3 pillars. The first is the Just Transition Fund, which will provide grants to the most vulnerable regions. The second and third pillar will provide loans to crowd in private investment and to support public sector investment. We have a budget for the Just Transition Mechanism, which amounts to near 55 billion euros. This amount comes on top of other funds which are available to make the energy transition, such as the Cohesion Fund, the European Regional Development Fund, or the Resilience and Recovery Fund. And we have put in place a special governance because governance is essential for the transition to the climate neutral Europe. And the governance is centered on territorial just transition plans. And as Said said, in these plans, member states will identify the territories which are most impacted by the transition. Because we focus the Just Transition Fund on these territories which are most impacted. All territories are not impacted in the same way. And we will focus on the territories most impacted in every member state. They will set out the development challenges in these plans. They will outline the pathways for transition and the Commission approval of these plans will unlock the support through the 3 pillars of the Just Transition Mechanism. We are not so advanced yet, and I can say that the territories that will benefit from this fund and mechanism have not been decided yet. There was a Commission proposal. But we are still discussing on the territories that will benefit from the fund with the member states. Of course, as I said, governance is central for this, the implementation of this fund, and all relevant national, regional, and local stakeholders are expected to be fully involved. The partnership principle is very important, and all stakeholders should be part of the debate about the future of their territories when these plans and the GTF programs are designed. The Just Transition Fund will finance, for instance, reskilling of workers, diversification of local economies, or revitalization of former mining sites. The Commission has set up a Just Transition platform to provide technical support for the implementation of this fund, and we will organize the next event next week. So I would invite you to attend. In terms of negotiating, we are currently negotiating with all member states, and some plans are very well advanced, but several still need major improvements, and some plans have not reached us in a complete form yet. Thank you, Said.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. Maybe a quick follow-up question, because you said that this is kind of work in progress. We are not there yet. Plans are being designed. We don't know yet exactly what type of regions will be supported in each of the member states. But I would like to ask you to tell us a bit more about the next steps. I mean, what is the time frame you see coming? So first we have these plans that should be ready, I think, very soon. I mean, there's a kind of deadline, right?
Well, we need to receive them as early as possible, of course, and member states are actively preparing them because we have our financial and budgetary execution, and member states might lose some financial engagements in case they don't provide their programs very quickly. So of course, this is the deadline is the possible loss of financial commitments.
Yeah, and then the use of the funds that can kickstart very soon once it's adopted, right?
Exactly. So we are expecting in the beginning of next year receive most of the plans, most of the programs, because the plans are embedded in cohesion policy programs. So this is what we are expecting. So second semester 2022, hopefully for everybody, for all members.
That's very clear. Maybe just one quick question, and we will come back to that later. Are there already kind of some takeaways from the plan that you already received?
Yes, I think this is a very interesting process because this fund is a new fund and it's a new approach. So we are aware that it's not easy to grasp what we are expecting, and this is why we are providing technical assistance. But we are very impressed by some plans we have seen already. We've seen some plans very high levels of ambition. And also some member states have had excellent response to technical support offered by the Commission. We provided technical assistance to a certain member state who asked for it to help them elaborate their plans. So there was a very good response to this proposal. And there is impressive investment by local actors and public administration, so big mobilization. Also high willingness to exchange and learn. And we see also some weaknesses, which is the issue of identifying impacts based on a clear transition pathway in many cases. Also, in some cases, all relevant stakeholders are not always involved in the preparation. And for us, the partnership principle is a key principle, and we insist that all relevant stakeholders should be involved. Also, there is a need for more well-targeted socioeconomic objectives, as well as the need for economic diversification and skills to be more developed in the plans. So
okay. Thank you. We'll certainly come back to some of these points later. But let's move now to the next speaker, Francisco Tovar Rodriguez, who is the Deputy Director General at the Spanish Institute for the Just Transition. You have a lot of experience in aid schemes for renewables, application of European funds to low carbon economy. But of course, this new body that has been created, I think a few years ago in Spain, and that is responsible for the coordination, the programming, and the management of the Just Transition Fund in Spain, is a very interesting tool and a very interesting kind of institution. Francisco, could you tell us a bit more about what this institution is doing, the body you represent here, and also, of course, tell us a bit more about the situation in Spain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Said, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you especially for having for giving us this opportunity to present the experience of the Institute for Just Transition in Spain. Well, in fact, Spain is quite advanced in the process of transition from coal. In fact, the definitive closure of all coal mines in Spain took place in December 2018, and we are now in the process of closing the coal thermal power plants. There are 6 gigawatts that have already been phased out, and only two plants remains functioning today. One is in the island of Mallorca, and the other is in the peninsula. As you said, Spain created a dedicated body, the Institute for the Just Transition, in 2020. It inherited the functions of an institute for restructuring the mines of coal, and in the Just Transition Institute we are going to ensure that the transition will be just for all the regions and workers concerned. Just as Miriam said, no, in the same line that the European Commission is asking. So maybe we can say that we have done some of the work in advance. Some of this work is 12 convenes for just transition that has been launched by the Institute, with the participation of stakeholders of the different regions affected by the transition, especially by the closure of coal. And these convenes include different phases of diagnosis of each territory, a list of municipalities covered and concerned by this transition and covered by the convene, and finally an identification of the most interesting projects that can help to these territories and to the people affected by the transition to improve, no, and to get a further development. Apart from this, Spain is taking very seriously this question of the just transition, and has dedicated one specific component of its recovery and resilience plan to the just transition, with 300 million euros. And also we will receive the funds from the Just Transition Fund that Miriam explained. It is around almost 900 million euros that will come on top of all these opportunities. The type of schemes that are covered by the Institute in cooperation with the autonomous regions are the following. We give aids to coal workers, different kind of aids in the form of early retirement and pension schemes, aids for reskilling and integration of the unemployed people in the laboral markets. We give aids to companies for economic diversification and job creation, job maintenance and job creation. We also give aids for the development of infrastructure in municipalities, in the municipalities most affected by this transition. And we are speaking about the infrastructure of industrial sites, circular economy, broadband, water management, and so on. And we also give aids from the Institute to environmental restoring of the areas affected by coal activities. Apart from this, we have also very, let's say, innovative schemes. We have a scheme for granting the grid connections that have been left by the capacity of coal power plants that have been phased out. we just published a scheme for giving this capacity grid connections with the condition of just transition. So meaning that you go to the grid connection with a renewable facility, but also you have to accompany that with a project for creating employment or for attracting investment to this area, to the area where the coal power plant phased out. And well, from my side, this is all I wanted to say as an introduction.
Okay, that's great, Francisco. Maybe just one follow-up question to you too. You are an institute at the national level. You are discussing with the regions and with all the stakeholders. Could you say a bit more about your approaches? What is the kind of process that you're going through? What kind of stakeholders are involved in this process, and how long does it take? I mean, from start to a real plan, right? To before the implementation of it.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the main stakeholders are the autonomous regions. As you know, Spain is a very decentralized country, and the autonomous regions have a very important role, as well as the municipalities. The municipalities and other local entities like provinces and other local entities are very important in our process. The unions have been very important as well in the process of closing coal mines in Spain, and are also being consulted in these convenes of just transition, and as well as NGOs, environmental NGOs, social NGOs, representatives of the social economy, of the young people, of women. So we have a broad partnership with all these actors, no? And we can say that we started this process in advance. We don't have yet they presented the territorial just transition plan, but we have, and it is in our website, you can consult it. We have all the convenes for the different regions and territories affected by the coal transition, and the partnership process that we have followed to arrive to these convenes.
Okay, so basically you have already the regional plans. And now you need to bring them together and finalize basically the plan for the Commission. Yeah. And I assume that also these plans are tailor-made. Like in every region, they may be different, right? The type of investments you do can depend on the type of problems they face.
Yeah, we have different needs depending on the region. Some of them are common because especially the regions with coal mines have problems, have similar problems of let's say difficult accessibility, not enough infrastructure for broadband, workers with lacks of experience in other sectors apart from coal, but also we have also some regions that are affected just by the coal thermal power plants that didn't have any mining. And so the characteristics and the type of projects are different. And because of that, we are taking into account all the opinions and observations from the regions, especially, and from the municipalities.
Okay, and then do you have the feeling that there is enough money around really to make this transition happen and to really modernize these regions? Or do you still feel that despite all the efforts, you would be happy with more money?
Well, if you ask the people from the regions, they will always ask for more, no? Mm-hmm. Well, just we think it is a good effort. This 300 million that we have from the recovery plan plus this 900 million, it is well a good quantity of money. We think we can we are confident that we can make a lot of things, no, with this support.
Okay,
but it will never be enough, but it will be very important for these regions.
Okay, that's clear. It's more than 1 billion euros, of course, that you will be able to spend, and I assume that with this money you can also attract additional money, like additional investments, etc., from the private sector, maybe. Yeah. Okay, we may come back to that later, but let's move now to the next speaker. We were in the south of Europe, and now we're moving to the very north of Europe. Elika Berglund-Aas, she is a research officer for a trade union, Industrie Vakket Metall. Elika, you have a bachelor degree in business administration in economics and political science, with also academic experience in political science. But since 2014, you focus your energy on climate policy, but also on energy policies. And you're from Sweden. So, Erika, I would like you to tell a bit more about what's happening there in the high north of Sweden, and share your experiences and maybe your ideas about the way forward. Erika, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you, Said, and thank you for inviting me here today. I'm glad to be here to be able to represent our members. So the climate transition is one of the most serious and pressing issues of our time, of course, and we must all take responsibility for ensuring that a transition to a sustainable society is at the highest possible pace. But we also have to make sure that the transition can stay just. So in 2017, the Swedish Parliament adopted a climate policy framework. The framework consists of a national climate goal, a climate act, and a climate policy council. The aim was to create a long-term framework with clear conditions for business and society, but of course also to live up to the Paris Agreement. The goal is to be climate neutral by 2045, and that means that all emissions shall be reduced by 85% compared to 1990. But Sweden also has an intermediate target that 70% of the emissions from the vehicle fleet should be reduced by 2030. But I would like to continue to tell you more about the industrial transition in northern Sweden, as you said, Said, and especially in Norrbotten, which is one of the territories chosen for the GTF and the steel industry. And then I would like to continue to tell you about two of the huge industrial investments in northern Sweden. So for those of you that doesn't know much about Sweden, Norrbotten is represents almost 1/4 of Sweden's total land area, but only 2.5% of the Swedish population is based in Norrbotten. Norrbotten has a large natural resources such as wood, ore, and hydropower, and the industry in Norrbotten consists of a few very large plants in the mining and steel industry, but also in the paper and pulp industry. So the region is dependent on the jobs available in these industries, and at the same time, all of these plants will have to adjust their operations for us to achieve the climate goals. So the steel industry in Sweden is a very niche-oriented production with an increasing focus on steel that provides environmental benefits from a life cycle perspective. The Swedish steel industry is one of few big employers in Norrbotten, and in the total of Sweden, they employ about 16,000 people. The steel industry stands for about 1/3 of the industry emissions in Sweden. So we see two big industrial investments in Sweden. The first is HYBRIT. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a collaboration between SSAB, a steel company, LKAB, a mining company, and Vattenfall, electricity company. So the aim is to develop a fossil-free value chain for iron and steel production using fossil-free electricity and hydrogen. The hybrid technology has the potential to reduce Sweden's total carbon dioxide emissions by at least 10%, and may in the future help to reduce emissions from iron and steel production globally. The second project we have is the H2 Green Steel, and it's a new company that was founded in 2020 with the aim to build a large-scale fossil-free steel production in northern Sweden. They are starting from scratch, building a large-scale hydrogen-based company, and by 2024 the company will be in production in Norrbotten, Boden. And by 2030 the ambition is to produce 5 million tons of fossil-free steel annually. So as you see, we have two very big industrial investments in Norrbotten, and they are both dependent on a stable electricity system for green hydrogen, but they are also in need of skilled labor to make the investments possible. So the JTF, or Just Transition Fund, territorial plan for Norrbotten, the plan as we've seen it now has 4 kind of efforts that are planned for: investment in technology and infrastructure for clean energy, investment in research and development, and competence improvement and retraining, investment to encourage circular economy. So of course for our members, the number 3, competence improvement and retraining is the most relevant effort. And 2 of the most important topics here are efforts made to validate the skills of our members and efforts to map the skills needed in the steel industry for the transition. But it's also important to coordinate these efforts with our existing educational system so that we can gain from former investments in relation to skills development. But we also see that the investment made in clean energy is necessary if the transition is to be successful. But for the steel industry to make this transition, we see 3 main challenges. The first one is to find enough skilled labor in Norrbotten or in Sweden, but for people to move to Norrbotten. So the efforts regarding skills development will be of importance, and the companies will have to strengthen their strategic work connected to issues regarding skills. It will also be important to attract young people to both mining industry and steel industry, and to make the societies in Norrbotten appealing to live and stay in. Another big challenge is to make sure that the electricity system can deliver green electricity to competitive prices so that our companies can maintain their position and competitiveness. Today we see rising electricity prices, and the question is if the market can maintain a high level of reliability. In Sweden, we expect the demand for electricity to double until 2050. And one last challenge is the need for more efficient processes of permits and renewed permits. There is a huge debate in Sweden on how we can make these processes more efficient. We need the processes to be shorter in terms of time, but also more transparent for the companies. Today, we see that companies avoid making changes in their production that could reduce emissions due to complicated processes connected to the permits. I think that is
okay.
what I would like to say.
Elike, thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation of what is happening there in the north of Sweden and Sweden more generally. You as a trade unionist, I was wondering to what extent your members, the workers actually in these steel factories and the energy intensive industries in the north of Sweden, to what extent they feel actually happy about the pace of the change that is coming. Do they feel involved in preparing their future? Do they feel empowered to be part of it? When you speak with your members, what is the kind of reaction you receive when speaking about climate?
So I think now we talk only about Norrbotten, and then if we focus on the steel industry and mining industry, I think the reactions are positive. Everyone agrees that the transition is it's the only way to go. So we have to make the adjustments possible. I think the members have had a good dialogue with the employers and the unions on the plan. So I think they're positive, mostly. Of course, not everyone, of course, but I think like the main.
Yeah. Okay. A majority of people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Feel confident about the future. Yeah. That's a really good thing.
So.
Yeah. You mentioned these three challenges: the labor shortages, and of course the reskilling of people. And then the energy, and actually a fourth one was the permitting that you mentioned. That is of course a very local issue. I'm just wondering, of course this is a very specific region, not very populated. Do you think you can at all stay attractive, to attract people from other parts of Sweden to this region? Because in many places in Europe, we see depopulation of certain areas. Is that something you fear also, or you think, as long as the employers pay enough money, people will come anyway?
Yes, of course, there are qualified jobs, but yes, we've seen a lot of people moving from the northern Sweden to Stockholm, to Gothenburg, but mainly also for jobs, because there haven't been enough jobs in the northern part of Sweden. So I think that if we can make not only people doesn't just want jobs, they want culture, they need housing, we need to build like attractive communities for people to actually move there and want to stay there. So I think it's not just up to the companies to attract people, but for the whole society to attract people from southern part of Sweden to actually move there. So, but I think it's possible. Yeah, if we work together, it's not impossible.
and you feel you're working together to create a future for the region. I mean, we discussed the example of Spain, where you have this institute that actually works with the regions and develops these plans together with all kind of stakeholders. I mean, how this Swedish plan is being designed, and do you feel sufficiently involved, and do you think this is the right approach, and do they focus on the right things, or are there still things missing that you think, oh, this I would love to have that there, and I don't see it?
No, of course there are always things missing in the plans, but I think the main efforts that have been made in the plans, I think they're good. The validation, the skills development, I think they're like what needs to be in place for the transition to happen. But we also have an existing system for like educational system in Sweden, so we need to connect these two. We don't have to like make up a new system for skills development or to attract. So
basically to reorient it to the new type of needs that we have, etc. Okay. All right, that's great. We will come back in the second round to a number of other issues. Let me move now to the east of Europe. Katarzyna Smitek, you are a former president of I think the Polish Youth Climate Council, if I'm not mistaken, and you are also a Climate Pact ambassador, and you participated, of course, in your capacity as president of the Youth Climate Council in many high-level meetings on climate and sustainable development, and now involved in the organization of the 11th session of the World Urban Forum, where you are responsible for youth engagement during that event. Katarzyna, you are from Poland, and I believe from Silesia in particular, and that is a region that will be particularly impacted, I think, by the energy transformation, and also benefit from the Just Transition Fund. So I'm looking forward to your views and and know more a bit about what is happening over there. So please, you have the floor, Katarzyna.
Thank you very much, Said. And I'm sending my greetings from a busy Glasgow, so I'm now at COP26 as well. What's happening in Silesia? I think that in case of just a transition mechanism and in case of just transition fund in general, and the fact that Poland will benefit, is the country that will benefit the most from the Just Transition Fund. I think it's crucial to remember about these 3 pillars of the Just Transition mechanism, and I would like to focus on them in my intervention actually. So how young people can be a part and be within also these 3 pillars of the Just Transition mechanism, and how we can all refer to Silesia and Poland in particular. So the first pillar, of course, of the Just Transition mechanism is member states and regions. And when we are talking about youth involvement, and we are talking about this European solidarity in case of the Just Transition, I think we are often forgetting that young people in various countries and various member states of the EU really are looking forward to developing, to getting the same knowledge at the same pace. So, for example, in case of the Just Transition, we see that, for example, in Western Europe, some universities, I'm very happy that Elika has also mentioned the education and the skills improvement and development. In Western Europe, we can see that there are various university courses, various classes on Just Transition mechanisms. There are classes on the energy transition, on energy and engineering, on innovative courses. While still in Eastern Europe, we see that, for example, coal engineering is still one of the courses that students can choose. So how we can actually talk about this European solidarity case of Just Transition mechanism if young people from, for example, from my country, and it's particularly interesting also in Silesia, in case of my region, that people are still choosing coal engineering as one of the university courses because they believe that it's a very safe and stable job, that they know that they will benefit from it in financial way. So they don't really want to look forward to new innovative, let's say, developments. And in this sense, I think that with all what's happening within the EU, with all the new policies that the Commission has announced with the Fit for 55, that we've already mentioned and covered, with the climate neutrality by 2050, I think people may feel a bit lost, also including young people. So in this case, and in case of Just Transition mechanism, I think that it's crucial to actually focus also on communication. So how we can communicate, showing that all of these policies are merged. So we are not talking only about Just Transition. We are not talking only about Fit for 55. We are not talking about European Green Deal and the European Climate Pact that I'm ambassador of. And we are not talking about like climate neutral Europe by 2050, but it's actually all combined together. So these are not like very random different policies that the young people can observe, that actually there are all the policies that will make sure that we as young people, as I hope responsible adults in 30 years, will be happy to actually see implemented. We will be happy to see included in our life and achieved by the governments. And I was very happy to hear that Miriam mentioned that the governance is actually and should be at the center of Just Transition in general. And I think that this governance should be at the center, of course, but then at the other center should be young people and people in general. So the question is, and the second pillar of the Just Transition mechanism is, of course, people and the citizens. So how we can make sure that the people in general, but also including young people, are involved in the whole process. And in this sense, of course, we can see various consultation processes, we can see various webinars and information sessions, but how we can make sure that people and young people in particular are involved actively in the whole process, because how can we expect that young people will support the Commission soon? How we can believe that the young people will actually be happy with the results in 2050, hopefully with the success of climate neutral Europe, if they won't be a part now. So in this thing, I think that, for example, in case of various NGOs, of various youth climate councils that I also represent, of various bodies that not only gather young people and other generations, but also work on this communication side. So once we see that one of the various NGOs or various organizations is involved in the process, then observers, so citizens who may not be really interested, even though they should be, because it will impact all of us, they think, okay, one of the organizations is already involved, so maybe our citizens' voice is also included. And I see that in Silesia. So for example, we have this in the city of Katowice, so the capital city of our region. We, for example, see that there is the Green Fund, so the Civil Green Fund. So if you have a great idea for your innovative activity or some innovation in the city and you would like to get money from the city budget, you can actually apply for this Green Fund, and you will get, with the support of the citizens, you can make a real change in the city. So I see that if people have this chance, even though they may not be actually involving the whole process, then they think, okay, it hasn't been created only by the local government, it hasn't been created by the government, or it hasn't been done by the funding from the EU. It was done by people, and also the approach and perspective changes. So they think, maybe it's something better, maybe it's something more interesting and important. And it works the same way in case of young people. So if they know that the young people work on this very specific thing, they think, okay, maybe then it's even better that only the commission done that, only the government did that. So I think it's also very important. But coming to the third and last pillar is actually companies and sectors. So how can we make sure that governments and young people are now involved? We already have consultations, we already have this solidarity. We know that all the countries are developing at the same pace. But then the question is, how can actually young people get involved in the companies and have this intersectional cooperation? So how young people now at universities choosing the, let's say, correct courses, so the ones that will help them develop in the future and also will make sure that our planet and our future is safe and stable. How we can make sure that these people will also be great employees, how we can make sure that they will benefit the economy, not only of the local countries, but also of the European Union and maybe other countries as well. So how we can make actually sure that they are part of the just transition process and just transition mechanism. And also, then once they are the young people are the part of the business sector, how we can make sure that the whole business sector is part of the just transition. We are talking about Fit for 55 as well. So how we can make sure that in this great and very ambitious project, which it is, how we can make sure that the whole economy and the whole, let's say, the setting changes, how we can make sure that businesses support also the European Union in this fight, how they can support also the national member states. So I think that in this sense, I have nothing else to add than intersectional cooperation is needed. So once we have the governments, regions, local authorities involved, we have people, including young people, involved, and finally we have business and this intersectional cooperation in place, then I think that that's actually the main just transition mechanism, if we can say so. Then we have it finally, and the real just the transition mechanism that we are discussing now can be in place and can be successful.
Great, Katarzyna, thank you very much for your very enthusiastic contribution. Maybe just as a follow-up, I'm just wondering, because I think it's a challenge, to what extent you think young people from all socioeconomic classes can join this debate and discussion? Isn't there a danger that, you know, young people from lower income households, or that maybe don't go to university, they may be lower skilled young people? How can we, you know, make sure that these people are also part of the journey and involved and become enthusiastic about the future and become more confident about the future? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very important question as well, because we always said, oh, young people are digital natives. They've been born in the internet. They know how everything works. But then we forget also about people, as you said, from low income houses that actually have maybe not access even to some technology as computers, as smartphones, not to mention the internet. So if we are, for example, saying, oh, join our online consultations, and we are not thinking that also within the European Union and within the member states, we have groups of people that don't have access to the internet, that don't have access to technology, then we are leaving them behind. And of course, we are promoting the slogan of leaving no one behind, but actually promoting online consultation is always leaving somebody behind. Also including this intergenerational cooperation, so the elderly, how many old people have this constant access? Also very limited numbers still. So I think that in this case, the communication is key. So we have the online consultations. People who can join them, they can do it no matter their background, social, political, let's say also financial background. They can join it. But if they also they don't have means to actually join it because of financial means, as I mentioned, because of internet technology and all the IT mechanisms, then we should also provide them with opportunities in local authorities, local governments. That's why we also have city councils. That's why we also have local governments, regional offices. And then I think that because we also have representatives, for example, of the European Commission in all of our member states, then we also can have these in-person meetings. Of course, because of the pandemic, it may be more difficult, but also with social distancing, with masks on, I think it's all possible. So if we cannot provide everybody with technological means and with financial means to support this technological means, then we should also have the same opportunities in person. Of course, we would maybe waste some paper, but then I don't really think it's wasting paper, because even if somebody gives us some feedback on paper, they are saying how we can improve just transition mechanism, how we can improve the whole transition process, how we can actually support our countries in this great mechanism and this whole, let's say, transformation.
Thank you, Katarzyna.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, we still have a bit of time to respond to some questions that we got some through the Slido system. And if ever you would still have a nice question, please continue trying. Okay, yes, here we see them. Can the Just Transition Fund also finance some of the early retirement schemes that were mentioned by Francisco? Maybe this is something for Miriam, who is the expert from the Commission. And also the second question, I think, is more addressed to you. Do all the EU member states receive money from the Just Transition Fund, or is it kind of a selected group of member states? Miriam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Said. So the answer is that the GTF cannot finance the early retirement schemes or compensation schemes for workers who have been laid off. As I said, to mitigate the repercussions of employment, we can support upskilling and reskilling of workers or job seekers.
Okay. Yeah. So most probably, I guess that these plans are being designed to include EU funds, but maybe also other funds, from national or regional authorities or from private partners. I think it's a question to Elika, who is financing the investments in Sweden mentioned by you. I think this is about the Swedish ambition plan to become climate neutral by 2045, and you mentioned a few examples. I assume also here it's kind of mixture, but Elika, can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so there are two investments, but the first one, hybrid, there's been a co-funding situation between the state and the companies involved in the venture. So the state has been co-funding the demo facility, and that is where the state is now. Or the state with the investment, and the H2 Green Steel is a company funded investment.
Okay, that's clear. And obviously Sweden, like all the other countries, they also obtain money from the recovery plans, and you have also the upcoming Just Transition Fund and of course other funds that are being made available. So it will always be kind of a mixture. But maybe that's also maybe something to dive into a little bit more. You mentioned rightly so the contribution of the private sector, the steel makers and energy generation employers, and I mean, do they really contribute, to transforming their own facilities? Do you feel that this is working well, that they are ready to invest and co-invest with the public authorities? Do you have the feeling it works well?
You mean in the steel sector?
For instance, in the steel sector, Well, let's focus on the steel sector.
Yeah, yes, I do think so. And SSAB, the company that was initiating this hybrid project, they've been very positive from the start, and they've been leading the project. So I think, yes, of course, it wouldn't have been able without the money from the co-funding from the state. But I think that they believed in this initiative from the start, and now they see that the demand for green steel is growing, and everyone is super interested in the products that they're producing. So
yeah, and for them it's a saving, because the carbon price will increase, and you know, modernizing their installations will be a must, I guess. Huh? There was this other question about the retraining of workers. Will all current workers be retrained in the plans that are on the table, or is it just like a tiny part of the workforce?
No, of course not. But I think that is why the fund can play an important role here, because the companies need to map like the skills needed for the transition. I think that is a really important step for the companies to actually know what skills are needed in the new kind of company. So, but I think it is still uncertain. I see that what kind of training, but it is still uncertain what kind of retraining would be needed.
Yeah, and it's also something that will take time. I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
But it needs to be anticipated, and that's what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, Miriam, I think you forgot to answer this question about whether all member states can enjoy the money or just a few. Miriam.
Yes, so an envelope is foreseen for all member states. It's in the Annex 1 of the GTF regulation. And the distribution takes into account the number of people employed in fossil fuels and the carbon intensity of the industry. But as I said, it will be the approval of the program containing the Just Transition Fund and the Just Transition plans that will unlock the support. So money is foreseen, but we are expecting to receive and approve the programs. Okay.
And of course, the regions involved need to, be compatible with a number of criteria that are in the regulation. Exactly. Then final questions I see here addressed to Kasia about what type of green courses do you actually have in Poland, and how you make sure the youth can be involved in all the changes. I understand, in the whole economy changes, right?
Thank you so much.
Quickly, 1 minute, because we are running out of time.
Yeah,
very short.
In case of green courses, there's, for example, the renewable energy engineering. So you already can see the change. Then there is also environmental protection and management. So it's also within green courses, and you can check. There are a lot of in France and the Netherlands and the UK. There are also a lot of green courses available. So that's the answer for the first question. And then the second question, how can we make sure? Actually ask young people for consultation on every single step. So if we are reforming business, then create the consultation process on business changes and include young people as one of the panelists, as one of give them the seat at the table. It goes the same with, for example, legislative changes. It goes the same with industry, and it's happening. We see that also in Poland. We are now preparing this white book of changes within the industry sector, and Polish youth is already involved. We have 5 representatives in the whole negotiation process. So it is possible, and I encourage everybody to do so as well. Thank you.
Great. As long as you are enthusiastic and dynamic, it can happen, right? Francisco, in 30 seconds, is there anything you want to share with us? But you need to unmute yourself.
No, well, yeah, just to thank again to everybody who is listening, and to give us the opportunity of this new way of making policy, not so new in Spain, but with the creation of this institute devoted to the just transition.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco. Okay, we're running out of time, so we'll have to leave it here. I would like to thank everybody. Just mention what Miriam said in the beginning. I think next week there is the meeting of the Just Transition platform, right? And I think everybody can join the discussions, and I guess you will find more information on the website of the Commission. So thank you very much, and let's keep in touch, and good luck with your fair and just and bright transition. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, here we are. I think
You're muted, Said.